Hi, I'm Cindy and I'm going to show you how to make grain-free tortillas today. Now with tortillas there's a little bit of a learning curve, which is why I'm doing a how-to video. I've been making tortillas with my mom since I was a little girl and it took me years to figure out her technique. In 2007 I found out I had celiac disease, so I had to learn how to make gluten-free tortillas. And it took me a couple years to figure that one out. And then in 2013 I had to go grain-free, so I had to figure how to make those. And so if there's any of you out there who are having to cut grains out of your diet because of inflammation, whether it's celiac or Crohn's or fibromyalgia or arthritis, whatever the reason that you're having to cut grains out of your diet, this is going to be a great recipe that you're going to want to try. So let's get started. Okay, so for my flour today I'm going to be using cassava flour, and in particular I'm using Otto's cassava flour. It's a grain-free flour. It comes from a vegetable, from the yucca plant, not from a grain. So there's a link for that on my website. And then usually I use palm shortening, but I'm out of palm shortening today. So I'm just going to use my vegan butter, and I can put a link for that too on the site if you'd like. Okay, so let's get started. So we're just going to start with 2 cups of the cassava flour. And I'm using a mixer. You can use just a bowl in your hands. That's how my mom always did it, so it doesn't matter. Then we're going to do half a teaspoon of baking powder and half a teaspoon of salt. And now my baking powder I make homemade because most baking powders have corn in them. So for this to be a grain-free recipe, you have to make your own baking powder, and I'll also have a link for that recipe on the website. Okay, and then we're going to add 1/3 cup of either butter or shortening. Just going to put it in there. And then you can mix it by hand, or like I said, I'm going to use my mixer because I'm lazy. And try to see how I need to incorporate all of that fat in there, so it's got to I don't want it to get too messy. Okay, so see how all the butter, all the fat that I put in is kind of spread out in there into little chunks here. Let me take this out so you can see all the little chunks. They're like little beads now. That's how it should look. It should be completely incorporated, but it's fine if there's still little beads in there, okay? Okay, so next you're going to add warm water. So I'm just going to add a little bit at a time until the dough starts to form. It's usually like a cup and a half of water. And what you're looking for is for the dough to come off the sides of the bowl. And even if you're mixing it by hand, you'll still see the dough come off the sides of the bowl. Okay, so it's perfect now. So now we have this big ball of dough. Nice ball of dough. Okay, and while we're working with the dough, you want to keep it covered. If you walk away from it, keep it covered. If you're right here though, just keep it. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to make what my mom called tostales, which is basically just a portion of masa, a portion of dough. So I do by the handful, so you're going to grab them by the handful. And there's 2 ways that you could do this. One is you could just roll it into a ball and throw it in there. But the way my mom did it is she would kind of tuck the dough under, so it forms this disc. And what this does is when you roll it out, it makes a circular shape. If I try to just grab a ball of dough and roll it out, it's going to make a funky shape. So I'm going to make these. Just going to make a whole bunch of these. Okay, so now we're all done. I've got them all in here, nice and prepped. Now here's one of my little tricks to making gluten-free or grain-free tortillas. I get a gallon-sized baggie and I cut off the zipper. This is actually what I'm going to be using to roll my tortillas in. So I'm just going to cut the ends here. Okay. So if any of you have ever tried making gluten-free or grain-free tortillas, you'll see that rolling them is impossible. They break because they don't have any gluten in them. So that's why I roll it in between these two pieces of plastic. You can use plastic, parchment paper. This is just the way that I found works the best. And I don't recommend using this recipe if you're trying to make gluten-free tortillas. I can post a separate recipe for that, because when you're making gluten-free tortillas, you'll want to add xanthan gum or guar gum or some other gum for elasticity. For this one, we're using the cassava flour, which is kind of a gummy flour, so we don't need it. So this recipe is specifically for grain-free tortillas. So I'm just going to grab one of my pieces of dough. I'm going to put it in between the paper here, and then you can just kind of roll it out the way you normally would roll out a piece of dough. It's not perfect, but that's fine. And then it won't stick because it's plastic. So now I've got my griddle heated here. I'm just going to lay that on there. And I'll roll out another one to show you how that works. So just put it in the middle there. And I just turn it. Pops right out. And you can use this same recipe for sopapillas if you like that, if you like those. I like to fry mine in coconut oil. I don't know if you can hear my my little boys screaming and playing in the background. Let's see. Yeah. So that's what you're looking for, just those little specks of brown. And you can use a spatula if you need to use a spatula. Like I said, I've been doing this since I was a little girl. This is how my mom did it. We use our hands. She was born and raised in Mexico, so she's a pro. Okay, so I'm just going to roll all these out, and then we'll see if they taste good. All right, so there's the last one. It makes an even dozen usually. So see this one? It's got the brown specks. It's just the right thickness, not too thick, not too thin. They cook about 2.5 minutes on each side, and just watch how awesome that is. Look at that. And it's the cassava flour. It's kind of a gummy flour, so it's perfect for stuff like this. You should try making these at home. And check out my other videos, or whatever else was to say.